Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Curious Owlbear, and I'm here to explore everything Dungeons & Dragons, including history, lore, monsters, map-making, DM tips, and more. If at any point you find that you're having fun, consider giving this video a like, as there will be more to follow. The last video covered the Dawn War, which ended when Ubtao the Deceiver betrayed his fellow primordials, enabling the first pantheon of deities to capture or scatter the remaining primordial forces. Asmodeus has begun his rule over the Nine Hells as he engages the demonic forces of the Abyss in an endless struggle. The sun has been recreated, and the frozen oceans of Abeir-Toril have thawed as life on the planet starts anew, signaling the beginning of the Days of Thunder. As we move into this new epoch, we begin to have approximate dates for many of the major events. These dates come from the 5 native creator races that are beginning to settle on Abeir-Toril. Descendants of these 5 races will become many of the creatures that we are familiar with in D&D today. We will go into further detail about each of the creator races as we arrive at the point in history where their civilization reaches the pinnacle of its power. I would also like to briefly mention that I will be using Dale Reckoning, or the abbreviation DR, for the dates in my videos. Again, when we arrive at the major events that spawn other calendars, we will go into further detail about why that particular event deserves its own calendar. Dale Reckoning is the most widely used calendar in Faerun, which is the continent that most of the campaign modules focus on. This calendar's 0 year is the year of the sunrise, when the humans of the Dale lands and the elves of Cormanthyr created a monument as a symbol of their unity. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. The story of the Days of Thunder begins long before the Dale Reckoning, around the year -35,000 DR, and will continue for approximately 5,000 years. When the frozen oceans of Abeir-Toril finally thawed, thanks to the warm rays of the new sun, the glaciers revealed a massive supercontinent, similar to Pangaea in our world. The creator races, ancestors to many of the native creatures of Abeir-Toril, began to appear, and they named the continent Mororoboros. Around the year -35,000 DR, the Saruk empires rose to power. These Saruk are of the Sauroid creator race, whose offspring became the Serpentine races and Lizard folk. One empire, known as Akoth, was founded along the shores of Azul Duth, which was the largest freshwater lake in Faerun at the time. Within 100 years, most of the supercontinent had been claimed by Akoth. In -34,800 DR, the Saruk Empire Mahershalk was founded on the Chultan Peninsula. This empire is often credited for the creation of the Naga, Terrafolk, Troglodytes, Yuan-Ti, and numerous other races. Around 300 years later, Istahsefafil, another Saruk empire, was founded in the lands that would later become a massive desert. After a century of civil unrest and civil war, Akoth fell and drove many Saruk to the outer plains. By about -34,000 DR, the realm of Faerie was ruled by the Fae, creators of the Chorids, Sprites, and Pixies. In -33,800 DR, the Saruk Empire Istahsefafil was assaulted by the Faerlin from the buried realms within the Underdark. In an effort to drown their foes, Istahsef wizards shifted the flow of the narrow sea so that it ran from east to west, resulting in massive flooding. Although the plan was successful, the ensuing ecological change became the downfall of the empire, as plains around them withered, giving way to desert sands. About 300 years later, the Saruk Empire Mahershalk began to decline in power. Some of their offspring, the Yuan-Ti, claimed much of their empire, and it became their homeland. Around this time, the Batraki empires, creator race of amphibioids, bullywugs, doppelgangers, Kopru, and Kuatoa, began to rise in power. 2,000 years later, around -31,500 DR, the Batraki empires reached their zenith under the guidance of Zakudian, who led the Batraki until his tragic defeat at the hands of the Titan Omo. By negative 31,000 DR, the Batraki empires were deeply entrenched in a great war with the Titans. The Titans are the largest of the giant races, and the highest ranking in their social order, but they are not to be confused with the primordials who traveled to the Forgotten Realms from the elemental chaos. In a bid to change the tide of the war, the Batraki empires released some of the primordials from their prisons on Abeir-Toril. As you can probably guess, the primordials were unpredictable and uncontrollable. One particular primordial, known as Asgaroth, was determined to destroy the world if she could not control it. She clasped a neighboring ice moon within the astral sea and hurled it at Abeir-Toril. Ao the Overgod sensed the impending doom of his creation, and he separated the world into two entities, Abeir and Toril, in order to save Toril where the creator races lived. There are a couple of things to mention about this story. Firstly, Asgaroth is also known as the dragon god Io. Some sages believe that Io was actually a primordial that ascended to godhood, while others believe that the names are simply interchangeable. I am personally of the opinion that Asgaroth and Io are two names for the same creature. They come from different cultures who perceive the creature in a different way. Asgaroth is the name widely used by dragonkind, and their creation myth even states that Asgaroth is the creator of the multiverse. This version of the draconic god is more brutal, gruesome, and animalistic in nature than Io, and is often depicted as a mighty hunter constantly roaming the outer planes. Io is the name commonly used by the races of Abeir-Toril, who view the creature as the creator of chromatic and metallic dragons, with some sages even crediting her for the birth of the Dragonborn. There will be a link in the description to the Forgotten Realms wiki, where they describe Asgaroth and the debate over the name if you'd like to check it out in further detail. Secondly, the separation of Abeir and Toril essentially caused the birth of two new planets. Although both presented many of the same geographical features of Abeir-Toril, some aspects, such as their inhabitants, differed from their previous state. Getting back to our story, in the moment that Ao separated Abeir from Toril, the ice moon burst into a rain of meteors that fell onto Faerun. This event is commonly referred to as the Tearfall, and shortly thereafter, the first dragons appeared on the continent. Some scholars maintain that a rapid climate change affected the planet after the fiery rain, and caused the first dragons to mutate into the various forms they take today. Other sages believe the meteors simply contained the eggs of the different forms of dragons. Either way, 500 years after the Batraki empires reached their zenith, they were unable to deal with these massive ecological changes, new predators, and conflicts with other civilizations. In their defeat, the Aeari empires, ancestors of the avian races like the Aarakocra and Kenku, began to fill the power void. Around negative 30,700 DR, 1,000 members of the Aeari-Croca Empire were killed by a much smaller force of Emasu. It is unclear whether this directly led to the experiments that yielded the first winged worms, later known as wyverns, or if their appearance around this time is merely coincidental. Around 300 years later, a conflict arose between the Gnolls of Urg-Narash and the Rookery of Kukrui Shara, which was a civilization of the Aeari. The shamans of Yinogu, the demon prince worshipped by many Gnolls, summoned Marashi to blight Aeari crops. The Marashi were winged archers adept in spreading contagions in exchange for treasure or dominion over lands. They spread a wasting plague over the Aeari crops which decimated the avian races. In desperation, one Aeari empire even turned to a demon lord for salvation. In approximately negative 30,000 DR, dragons began a terrible assault on the remaining Aeari empires. The invasion took place over land, air, and underground in the first flight of dragons. The Aeari empires were quickly and totally destroyed, which prompts the beginning of the time of dragons on Faerun, which we will cover in our next video. As I mentioned, we're getting into the period of history where we have some approximate dates given by the first mortal races of Abeir-Toril. I'm sure that you've noticed the dates and names on the right side of the video. These are meant to assist DMs in their note-taking or further research. Let me know if these are helpful to you, or if you'd prefer to just have the links in the description. I hope that you've enjoyed our look at the Days of Thunder. As usual, if there's anything I missed or anything I got wrong, let me know about it in the comments. Until next time, stay curious, adventurers.